In this video, we're gonna go over everything we needed to do to clear 37s on our second gen Sequoia.
Stop it, we're not saying that on camera.
Before we get into all the things that we are gonna have to do to get these tires to fit on our car, I know all the internet engineers and all the nerds are gonna come out and tell me everything that they did to get theirs to fit and what we should be doing. So let me get this out of the way. First and foremost, a skinnier tire will be easier to fit than a wider tire. Secondly, a higher offset wheel that goes into the fender well will be easier to fit than a lower offset wheel. In fact, if you have a very low offset wheel, it probably won't fit. It'll probably end up rubbing on the top of your fender well. So let's get that out of the way. Secondly, there are some things you have to have if you're gonna fit 37s, no matter what. At the very least, an aggressive front bumper cut. We have a metal bumper, which will give us all the clearance in the front, but if you don't want to put on a metal bumper onto your rig, then cut the shit out of your front bumper. Secondly, you're gonna need a lift. You can't put 37s on a Sequoia without a lift. Sorry, I know everyone's gonna say you can, but you can't. And then thirdly, at the very least, some new upper control arms. We have the JBA off-road high caster upper control arms, and that really allows the wheel to be a little bit more in front of the steering point or the upper control arm point, which will get us the clearance we need. With all that said, we're gonna show you everything we had to do to get these to clear. But let me show you how tight it gets when you put on 37s with the current alignment specs that we have. All right, let's get up and close and personal with this tire. So first and foremost, you can see that if we don't do anything, this tire is going to not only rub on the plastics of the car, but there are some metal pieces behind this plastic that the tire is gonna rub on. Also, it's gonna hit just the very front of our, looks like, not quite our slider, but it looks like the bottom of the fender. There's like a joint here with a bunch of metal. So it's definitely gonna rub on that, and it'll probably rub on the body mount. I wanted to show you guys this view before we start chopping things, so you can really see how tight things get in here when you put on 37. In fact, right here, there is no clearance. You can see the tire has to really go through this area and kind of force its way in, which is very bad. We're running the Titan 7 TAK1 forged wheels plus 35 1250 17 Nitto Tire Recon Grapplers. They're an all-terrain tire. It'll give the Sequoia the perfect amount of traction and great on-road compliance, so we went with an all-terrain, not a mud terrain. The wheel specs that we have are 17 by 8.5 plus 5. Now, I know I just said a higher offset wheel will help you clear, but at the same time, I want this rig to look a little bit aggressive. So I went with a plus 5 offset. For the money and for the value, you really cannot beat a Titan 7 forged wheel. This is an extremely affordable forged Overland wheel. Will not only save us weight on the trail, because now we have 37s, give us tons of strength, and Titan 7 is a US based company that really stands by their products. So if anything were to happen to these wheels, they offer amazing customer support. So I do have to say that that's the reason why we went with these wheels. Now in the back, you can see they're plus 5 all around. And the back is poking out just a little bit, but not too bad. I can tell you that if this does travel all the way up into the fender well, yeah, it might come in a little bit. We're for sure gonna rub up here. I don't plan on really crawling hard in this vehicle. I don't plan on really pushing the limits, because this is more of a land yacht or trail whale than a super capable crawler. And with that said, it'll give us tons of enjoyment on the trail, off-roading, camping with the family, as long as we kind of keep it in that groove. If I try to do the really heavy duty stuff, then I need to change some things. I probably need to go with a higher offset wheel, maybe even put 35s back on it, push that wheel into the fender a little bit more. But for now, this is what I like, and so I'm gonna keep it this way. You can't necessarily adjust caster for and aft, but you can adjust camber and toe. I don't really want to mess with those settings in this video because they're not going to give us any clearance, but I just wanted to let you know that you can't really move the wheel forward and back like you can on the front. And so that presents a little bit of a clearance problem right about here. If you draw a straight line from this directly down with this tire, we might get, oh my god, crow noises. We might get just the smallest amount of rubbing as this tire moves up. So now if we put the camera right here, a little parallel, you could see that that little bottom corner is real tight with the outer diameter of the tire as it goes up. So as this tire travels up, it might kiss the inside here. Now we know the areas to address on the Sequoia. What I'm gonna do is only really gonna solve our problem. If you have different width tires or different offset wheels, you probably will come at this with a different approach. But what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do things my way. So just use this video as a guide. Let's move into the wheel well so we can see what areas we need to address in the front of the car. First and foremost, you can see the discoloration of the plastics here, and that's kind of the car telling you, hey man, I need more space right here. You can also see that I did chop the body mount very lightly. This is not an aggressive chop by any means, just to give the tire some room to articulate in. This is not even on the trail, this is just steering from the tire shop back home. So first and foremost, we're gonna have to chop the body mount a lot more aggressively than this. And secondly, we're gonna have to work on this area here. There's a bracket on the bottom and there's a pinch weld on top that are gonna need clearanced. We're not gonna address anything here because I don't wanna damage my fender, and if this rubs just a little bit, so be it. I'd rather give the tire a lot more room to work with in here. This is an area I started grinding and hammering earlier, and I'm gonna actually take a razor blade and try to cut this area out to here, because I wanna start removing metal from here in. I know this joint here holds in the fender and gives it its rigidity, but I would rather get myself clearance for these 37s than have pieces like that of sharp metal cut into my tire. So I'm gonna cut away here, and that'll give me a better look of what's behind all this. But you can see this is the biggest culprit right here for tire articulation. Imagine the big old tire coming in here and rubbing on that. That's gonna be noise all day long. We have a nice look at what's going on behind the tire. Also, we kind of have an area here of where we just want a clearance. I can start hammering this and putting it out of the way because I don't want to open up the pinch weld too much. I've already hammered it a little bit, and then I can grind this down with my grinder and then hit paint on this slider here in case the grinder touches it. But that should give us, here alone should give us a ton more clearance. Eventually we're going to do a body mount chop cap for here because you don't want to leave this exposed. It's basically open to rust and all that. And we'll get into that later, but let me start working on this area right here to clearance this out. I hammered it from the bottom here, as you can see. And worked my way up. And that really provided a lot more clearance. Right now I'm gonna clean out all the dirt on the inside here, only because I don't want this dirt flying in my face once I start grinding. All right, 40 minutes of grinding later, you can see how much of the body mount I've actually removed, but I'm gonna put a cap over the body mount. And when I did my first body mount chop, nobody told me that you have to make up for the material that you'll be adding. So I really cut this body mount deep. It actually goes in behind the fender here, so we'll have more clearance. I can actually probably take off a couple more millimeters from the body mount itself, so that way this plate sits further back in. But now all I'm going to use is my flux welder and flux weld this in place. This is really to close off the cap and then also provide some strength back to this metal. You can tell I've cut the metal back so much, we're getting to like the pie cuts of the metal here. And so all we're gonna do is put some rigidity back in this mount. I also had to shape this cap just a little bit to get it to fit, and I beveled it, as you can see. You can do a million things with this body mount. There's even body mount chop kits that just chop off here and then put a cap on. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do this, but for sure you're gonna have to clearance out this pinch weld, you're gonna have to grind away this, and you're gonna have to give that body mount chop that body mount some breathing room. Up next is we're gonna tack this body mount plate in place and see how it fits, see how flush it is, and then maybe we can finish up the welds, and then we can paint everything up and we can move on the other side. All right, you can see I just finished welding, ground down my welds, and it's not pretty. No one's gonna compliment my welding, but it'll do. And that's all I care about. All right, we painted the inside of the wheel well. Now that we ground down all the welds, now it's time to throw the tire back on. We got the bottom mounts chopped. We got the fender liner tucked back, and then we got the little bottom of the fender radiused in as well. Now I'm sure we might get a little bit of rubbing on this edge here. Again, I don't really care about it. I really care about the critical stuff. That might self-clearance itself, but you can see there's a nice little pocket here so the wheel can turn in there. All right, let's see. Oh, wow. We did a great job. When I turned that, there was no rubbing whatsoever. The engine's on so I could turn the wheel the other way. But I mean, look at that. It just barely clears. I wish I could get the camera in so y'all could see. Look at that. Wow, there is light in between the tire and the body mount. That is a great success. Now it's time to move on to the back. Now the 37s really are shoved in the rear wheel well, and I assume under full compression we might get some rubbing in here, but I have a solution for that. It's also going to solve our little problem of how tight it is in here. If you open the back door, you'll see that this guard is actually rubber that's guarding the frame here from rubbing on the tire. And I'm not going to do anything about this section in here. I actually like that it's rubber, and I like that it might rub on the tire. Rubber on rubber, I'm okay with. But on the rear of the tire, what I can tell you through experience is with a mud flap that close to the tire, sometimes under crazy flexing, the mud flap likes to get right up in there and rub on the tire, especially if you're on a rock and you're scraping on something and you're coming off a ledge. The mud flap will go like that, the tire will move forward, and it'll pull all this in. And so the solution here is I'm going to do a bumper cut in the rear. Not only will it give me more departure angle clearance, but it'll keep those mud flaps from getting ripped up. What we're also going to do is we have a platinum Sequoia, so we have adjustable air ride. And let me show you underneath the car for our quick and dirty solution to raise the rear just a little bit. Welcome to the underside of a platinum Toyota Sequoia. The difference between a platinum and a regular or any other trim is we have factory air ride suspension, and we have these leveling tabs here. And the way we're going to solve the back is I'm actually just going to take a 10 and move this leveling tab up just a 1/4 of an inch on each side, and it'll give us that much more height in the rear to clear all those issues. If you have a car with springs in the back, you'll probably need a heavier duty spring if you don't have enough clearance or a spring spacer. Another thing too is the tandem lift kit that we have in the rear comes with adjustable arms that actually go to this. And we have this on the middle arm because I feel like that gives us the most amount of freedom up or down. You can go and switch this out to like the super high arm and you'll go really high in the rear, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to make a micro adjustment here and move it up a 1/4 of an inch. The next thing we're going to do for the rear is we're going to do a good old-fashioned rear bumper cut. And the way I taped this line off on what I'm going to cut was there's a bunch of 10mm bolts that hold on the rear bumper. And I went from the very top of this 10mm all the way around, and I drew a line to the bottom of the line here. And I took the tape measure, dropped the line all the way down. That blue line is exactly 5 1/4 inches from the line of the bumper. So that blue line will follow 5 1/4 inches all the way around until it starts to kick up here. Then we drop down to 1 1/4 inches below the rear fog light to help go around the corner, and then we go to that bolt there. Is this rear bumper chop gonna be perfect? No. But is it gonna give me clearance? Yep. And is it gonna give me peace of mind that my rear mud flap won't get absorbed into my tire? Yeah. In order to actually remove this part of the bumper, there are a bunch of 10mm bolts. It's kind of hard to see. They're down in here on the bottom side of the bumper. There's one here. There we go. Let's go backwards. There's one here. There's one right here, and they continue on. And there's also brackets that hold those bolts in place. Just gonna zip all those off. That way the bumper will be a little loosey-goosey, and then I'll bust out the plastic saw blade. I swear to God, everything on this car is so rusted. As I was removing one of the bottom bolts, it just broke off because of the rust. Ugh. When you remove the mud flap for the bumper chop, the bumper's just kind of hanging there, and we can't drive around like that. I actually trimmed off the bottom portion of the mud flaps, and you're left with something like this. You still have 5 bolts holding it together, 6 actually holding it together, and I used a jigsaw to do it because my Dremel was just heating up way too much. I'll have to replace this pop rivet here, but then boom, it'll hold it in place while I'm driving, so no more flopping in the wind. And we have somewhat of a mud flap, so we're legal. All right, when we cut it, we got some little rubber phalanges here hanging out. And so I got 150 grit sandpaper, and you just kind of sand away, and all the little rubber flakes just kind of come right on off. Wow, the rig looks so freaking good. Oh my God, Onyx couldn't agree more. Hi, Bubba. He's so happy. All right, thanks so much for watching. That's how we cleared 37s on our 2012 Toyota Sequoia Platinum. If you have a similar rig, you're definitely gonna have to do a lot of the same steps, but you know, there's some options here. You could do a body mount relocation. You could do a higher lift kit. You could do so many other things, even a skinnier tire, higher offset wheel. This is the way we did it. Hopefully, if you're trying to put 37s on your Toyota Sequoia, this helps. You don't need to go as far as we did with the rear bumper chop, but I don't want that rear mud flap being sucked in and ripping out. It's happened to me before. I'm telling you, it's a thing. So I just chopped it off. Some people might even opt for a rear bumper back there. And in fact, we would love to have a rear bumper back there, but I only have so much money. So if you're planning on doing 37s on your Toyota Sequoia, this should help. Of course, your front alignment's going to be a big deal here. Your caster settings, specifically how far forward or back that front wheel sits. I'm not going to get into alignment settings in this video, otherwise it will go on forever. So I'll just leave that up to you and your alignment tech. But other than that, the rig is done. Now it's time to clean her up, do some final prep work, and head down to Overland Expo PNW. I am so excited.